Real Talk is proudly sponsored by Huawei P20 Pro and MTN.
Each week for 10 weeks, we're giving away the latest Huawei.
Good evening and welcome to Real Talk with me, Azania Mosaka. You know, in life, there are very few things that are as distressing as a child custody agreement. More often than not, there's a lot of bitterness and pain that is inflicted by the parents who are involved that often gets transferred to the child. So today, we'll hear from two fathers with very different experiences to share. How often have you heard that the South African courts are biased towards mothers over fathers when it comes to child custody? Well, Thabo Seapi is a father who once believed this very thing himself until the courts officiated that it was in his daughter's best interest to live with him instead of her mother. Thabo, with that said, welcome to Real Talk. I'm glad you're here to talk about the father's experience when it comes to a custody agreement.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me.
So what is the current status of your custody agreement?
Okay, currently my daughter is staying with me, and the arrangement has been like this for the last 5 years. And as per the latest agreement from court, we will review the agreement again in 2 years' time.
I see. Why is that necessary, though? Is it not issued for the rest of her life as a minor?
I think the reason for the review is because the child's needs changes, is to look at whether the agreement is still in line with the child's needs. Because as the child grows, they need different things, and it's to make sure that what we do as parents is aligned to the child's needs, because everything is centered around the child.
Yes. And I like the fact that you're putting the focus on that. You're saying everything is or should ideally be centered around the child. But then take me back. Let's explore parts of the history of your relationship so that we can understand how we got to where we are. So before your daughter was born, were you married to the mother of your child?
No, we were not married, but loving couple. Both born in May. I'm born on the 15th, the mother born on the 17th. And it was our wish that our daughter will be born on the 16th. And we were blessed that she was born on the 12th.
Oh, wow.
So we actually share a week.
All three of you?
And as life happens, after the child was born, 18 months later, we started experiencing different challenges, and all to do with the child, because talking about raising a child and actually raising a child are two different experiences.
Absolutely. Had you talked about the way in which you wanted to do things prior to having her?
We did, but again, in talking, you cannot think of every possibility. But as life happens, there would be different things. Like I believe in certain things that we do culturally, like in Soto, when a child is 3 months old, we have to go cut the hair off, and those little differences, they start appearing because it's things that you talk about, but when they have to happen,
when
the reality is it's something completely different, and we react differently to that reality.
Yes. So in essence, that led to the breakdown of the relationship.
That's the only thing that did.
So what happened then? So once you decide, the both of you agree that you don't want to continue anymore in the relationship, and you now have to go your separate ways, there are those technical everyday life things that must be sorted out. So who moves out? Who stays with the child?
I decided to move out. I said I'll provide the shelter for the mother, the child, and the helper. And I moved out and kept paying everything, including the helper. After a year, we relooked at the decision, and the mother decided she'll go stay elsewhere. But I continued still paying there because it is my responsibility to make sure that I provide for the child. And again, it's not about who provides how much. It's both of us coming together and making sure that all the needs are taken care of. And with everything done that way, the mother did take the decision that she was going to take the child to the Free State. We both come from the Free State, and it's a decision that I didn't agree with.
Was she moving with the child to the Free State?
She just moved the child alone. The child was taken to the granny in the Free State. I was not happy with that, but even in the Free State, I still continue paying for the child's schooling. But after 6 months, I decided, you know what, the child needs to stay with one of the parents, either me or the mother. If the mother can't do it, I'm going to do it. And I just decided to fetch the child one random weekend. It was March 2013. I just decided to go, and I picked up the child. I had no plan as to how I was going to raise. She was 3 going to 4, how I was going to raise this 3.5-year-old.
This toddler.
But yeah, I think there was a will.
Why was that important to you? Because lots of people do leave their child to live with the grandparent while things settle, you know, whilst you figure your way about the world.
I think growing up, I've always been sure about the kind of father I wanted to be. I was not so clear about the kind of husband should I get married, but the father part, I was always clear about it.
Right.
I was always clear that I want my kids to grow out around me. And around me, to me, didn't mean me seeing them as often as possible. It meant being with me every day.
So before this Free State move, before you decided to go and collect your daughter, how frequently were you seeing her? Did you have access as and when you wanted to be with her?
I had access, and I would see the child minimum 4 times a week. That was the minimum.
How did that work? Did you take her to school, drop her off, would she spend the night with you?
I would, because she was still young, after work I would go where she was staying with her mom. I would leave when she sleeps. So I would do that literally 4 or more than 4 days a week.
Yes.
And every time when she sleeps, then I will drive off. And I would do that the next day and the next day and the day after.
So was this move and decision to fetch your child from the Free State, was it announced? Did you discuss it to say, this is what I've decided to do? What do you think? Or did you act alone?
2 months before I actually went to fetch the child, I kept on raising the issue of the child needs to stay with one of us. And I said, if the mother is not, for reasons known to her, she can't do it, then I will take it upon myself to go take the child.
Yes.
I announced, but the weekend I went to fetch the child, I didn't announce. Because when the child was in the Free State, I was going to the Free State every second weekend. And for that period of 6 months, what influenced again the decision was the child was often sick. And in that 6 months that she was in the Free State, she was in the hospital 4 times. And she saw doctors 7 or 8 or 6 or 7 times during that period. And I felt it had to do with the child not being happy. And I decided, you know what, the legal consequences of making this decision, I'll deal with that after. But I did that after reading the law. I understood that as a parent, I had the same rights as the mother to the child.
Yes.
So it's not like I was the secondary parent, that the mother was a primary parent, no way. So when I went to fetch the child, I understood that it's just a parent just fetching their child and coming to stay with their child. And that was it.
But did that cause an upset? Because when people are separated, things can get heated very quickly, even over the smallest things. This is a substantial thing, but it can get heated.
From that time to now, there's been several court cases. But the one relating to the child, I've always maintained that I'll represent myself, and which is something that I've done up to this point. To a point that when I go to Palm Ridge Magistrate Court, they know me by name. I am that father who's always there every week. Yes. For one reason or the other. But I wasn't gonna be scared by legal jargon. I believed in the truth and the fact that I was doing the right thing.
Yes.
And I couldn't explain.
I do want to get to that, but first I also want to understand from a father's perspective. I want us to stay with the situation in the Free State for a little bit, because men also talk about the frustrations they have, that this inability to see your child, that it's hard to eat, it's hard to sleep, it's hard to just be happy and content within your own life, because you're constantly thinking, what is the welfare of my child?
And the psychological effect, I cannot even begin to explain that. And not only even to myself only, because I started even seeing it on the child, when the child was now staying with me. But if I were to look at what was happening to me, if you think of the travel, basically, I had no life. A lot of things around me had to change. And I understood it to be the sacrifice that I am making as a father. Because even when I broke up with the mother, I felt I have let my child down.
Yeah.
Because now she's not gonna be in an environment where she's raised by both biological parents. So I always said the thing that I am not gonna let my child down again.
Yeah, so the failure of the relationship, you felt you were letting her down.
I did.
And now this absence is a further letdown.
Exactly. And it's very heavy on the mind. It's not something that even our learned friends, the lawyers, it's not something that even when they argue cases, they cannot put into the case itself. The emotional effect on the parents and the child itself.
Yeah, yeah,
And even with the child, like we had to get a lot of professional help just to deal with the psychological effect of everything that happened around her in her upbringing.
Well, let's pause it there for a moment, Thabo, because later on in the show, we'll be joined by attorney Shannon Nelmis. So if you have any questions or you need clarity relating custody agreements, just be sure to get your questions and comments ready for Shannon a little bit later. But more with Thabo after the break. Welcome back to Real Talk, and today we're talking child custody matters. And I've been in conversation with Father Thabo Seapi, whose 9-year-old daughter lives with him full-time. After separating from the mother of his child, Thabo would soon enter into a long and emotional custody case pertaining to his child. So Thabo, we're still unpacking the journey that you've had to travel. So you fetch your daughter, you've made the resolution, the decision to fetch your daughter. And then there was a legal action instituted against you by the mother of the child. Yep. What were some of the demands? What were the issues?
I think to summarize it, it said the child must stay with her. I must pay 10,000 rand maintenance per month. I must continue paying for the child's schooling, and I must take care of medical bills.
Right.
And then I looked at this. There was nothing that said what's so important, what is linked to the child. There was nothing linked to the child in all these demands because the mother at that time was staying in Midrand. Already we have applied that the child will attend school in Albertine, and the mother works in Centurion. And we start asking, I'm saying, now how is this going to work?
Yes.
If you were to stay with the child, every morning you have to drive the child from Midrand to Albertine, drop her off at school, then go to work in Centurion, come pick up the child from school in Albertine. Tell me the logistics around this, you know? And that's where you realize that in matters of this nature, they're very emotional. So the response that you get, it's more emotional than logical.
Right.
And which is understandable, which is understandable because every parent believes that the child being with them is the best decision that they would be making.
Yes, you think we'll make it work somehow.
Exactly.
You know, this is my load to carry and we'll make it work somehow. But as you say, sometimes it's not always practical. Then you went the mediation route. Mediation is a very interesting process because you come with your list, your ex-partner comes with their list, and you try and meet each other halfway. Did this work for you?
It was a long process. It took about 5 months.
Wow.
And eventually when we agreed, because I think what worked for us in this process was that the mediator was also a clinical psychologist. So she was the person who was saying, guys, in everything that you do, I also need to bring the interest of the child. So if I say I would love A, and the mother say I would love B, then she would say, but how would A and B suit the child?
Right.
Then both of us would have to change what we said and try to link it to the child. And after about 4 or 5 months, we came to what we thought would work. And a week before we signed it, the mother decided to pull out of the process.
Ooh.
And because it's a voluntary process, there was nothing I could do. There was nothing that the mediator could do, because they said no one can be forced to get into the mediation process.
Is that how you then ended up in court and this decision for you to represent yourself? That is such an interesting choice. I know legal costs are prohibitive for many people. We always talk about the prohibitive barriers of gaining access to the courts, and cost is one of them. So why did you decide to represent yourself, Tab?
In my case, I think in my experience, I honestly do not believe that the court process, especially pertaining to kids,
Yeah.
it's expensive. Because when I got to Palm Ridge Children's Court, I was told that as a father, you can put your case down, but try not to be emotional, which is a difficult thing because I had 4 pages, but when you read the 4 pages, I think the facts were only a page and a half.
Wow.
These other things were, I was waffling all over the show because you try so hard to try to show that, you know what, I am the best parent to live with this child.
Yes, and you're pleading to the judge's
most of the things
compassion.
that you wrote there, they were not relevant to the case. And they guide you, I think, and I must commend the clerks at that court because they would guide you and say, but how would this help the decision maker to come to the right decision?